Let me know if you can hear me. OBS, the second I started panicking. So I want to make sure things are all right. But this is going to be a really informal stream, but we just got news that Cam Robinson has been traded from the Jacksonville Jaguars to the Minnesota Vikings, which not really shocked. I was wondering if they might just go to, one of the free agents. DJ Humphries was out there. You can even throw out Bakhtiari, maybe. I don't know what his situation is, but there were some other options, so I wasn't 100% sure they did it. But Minnesota, once again, making an offensive line trade with us. But yeah, it's going to be pretty informal here. We're just kind of waiting for the news. We'll talk about it. But yeah, one of the first things mentioned in here, why this not happened in the offseason. I don't know. One of the most confusing things to me from this offseason was the lack of a move on Cam Robinson's contract. I never really understood it. We look at the salary cap. We'll take a look at that really quick. When we go to 2024, Cam Robinson had no guaranteed money on his deal. He's earning almost $18 million because the numbers that matter here, your prorated bonus is money that's been pushed down the road to this year from the past. So what he was getting effectively paid, what the cost was to have Cam Robinson this year, was $17.75 million, about $18 million. It's a lot of money. No guarantees on that deal. He's been hurt pretty much every single year. I mean, not trying to trash him, right? Robinson's played pretty well for the Jaguars. I have some criticisms, but he has been a good starting tackle for Jacksonville. The question has always been availability and money. And you look at these previous years under this contract, he played a good amount in 2022, but he went down late in the season. 535 snaps. Jacksonville comes in this year with Walker Little under contract. You just got Javon Foster. You have Anton Harrison on the right side. You got to figure out what you have in Walker Little, and they just keep the contract as it is. And they could have saved all this money. And now they're in a situation where, and we'll see what the compensation is, but they could have simply restructured him before this season for a far less amount. You could have done a lot of this in, what's the word that I'm looking for? Incentives. Because you simply could have done it for snaps, similar to what like Tyron Smith has with the Jets. They didn't care. They just kept it. And it's about time, right? And ultimately, this was a big mistake by the team not to restructure this deal before the season. They're going to get out of some of it, but just kind of a reckless way of going about it in my mind. I thought they would do something very similar to what they did with Brandon Scherf, where, like, you look at his deal. If we go to him, go to the history, 2024, this is the amount that he's earned. $10 million was what he was paid out for that season. He had 2 of his 3 years paid out. They lowered the cost this year because he was getting older. There was a reason why he wasn't going to earn this much money. They just never cared to do it with Cam Robinson. But there's my little rant to start this off. We're going to just keep refreshing Twitter nonstop and hoping that one of you guys actually gets the news and can tell me. We got Mr. Dolphin, member for 1 month. Appreciate it, man. Really sucks to see him go, not because of his play, but it just highlights this organization's complete inability to have sustained success. Yeah, it sucks for sure. I think it's the right decision, but the way this was handled was pretty ridiculous, as we've been talking about. It's good that they made a move. You hope it's something. And the good thing with Trent Baalke, at least, is that as much as we can trash him for not making trades, the ones that he does are usually really good trades. He gets good deals. I mean, you look at Ezra Cleveland. He's been a phenomenal player for Jacksonville this year. I mean, the way he's played has changed the tone of this offensive line. I think him alone has made this team an actual somewhat respectable run blocking unit. You look at the way he plays. Now, the grades aren't super high in run blocking this year, but really good pass protection grades. One bad game all season against Chicago. You're going to take that every day of the week. You got him for a 6th-round pick. You paid him like $8 million a year. It's a good deal, right? Those are the kind of moves that Trent Baalke makes, so I expect this to be a good move. But what's interesting, you see it right here, we already have their 3rd and 4th round picks. So what is this going to be? I don't know. Like, is it going to be a... I don't think it's going to be a second this year. I'll say that, unless we're sending back like a third or something like that. I don't think it would be a fifth. I think that would be ridiculous. And at that point, if you're taking on some of the contract too, most likely, that's a pretty poor decision. And that really just leaves 2026 compensation. So I don't think this will be for this year. My guess would be a third round pick in 2026, because the way it usually works with draft picks is they are devalued one round when they're a year off. So a 2026 third is really worth like a 2025 fourth. That's just generally how that ends up working. And yeah, he was the last remaining member of the 2017. That's actually an interesting fact there. I'll look through these comments we've got. Let's see. Do we exclusively trade with the Vikings? We've done how many deals with them now? Yeah, it seems like, at least for offensive line, we just trade with the Vikings, which, hey, I'm all for it. You guys don't really know this, but the Vikings are generally my second favorite team. Whenever Jacksonville sucks, I hope they play well, but obviously they're the Vikings, so it's not that common that they're a good team. But this has been a good year for them. My parents were Vikings fans. You know, a lot of our family's been, so, you know, always watch them pretty close. Yeah, Ezra Cleveland first 6. Crazy trade. I'm all for trading as many guys as possible. We need to rebuild. Give the next GM a lot of draft picks to use. Absolutely. And it's interesting to me because I was trying to look into what the Jaguars have done in the past with, like, when their GMs have been fired. Have they been trying to, you know, send off assets with general managers that wouldn't really have a reason to, right? Like, if you're Trent Baalke, what I mean by this, Trent Baalke's not going to rebuild this team. If he does, don't even worry about being a fan. But Trent Baalke has to have a good product on the field right now. He's had years and years and years of time. That's the expectation. It's not like this team has had some Super Bowl run that makes them safe. They've went 9-8, and they've maxed out there. They've never had a season where they were more than one win above 500. So he's not really safe in that regard. So for him to start trading off players is weird. If he's going to... It's a weird situation because you think he wouldn't do it, but you look at Dave Caldwell and what he did. He was trading off guys in 2019, 2020. He was starting the rebuild. He stripped this team down, and he got fired after that. So I don't know if it's something where maybe, you know, Shad Khan's telling him, you got to do this, and we'll see what happens at the end of the year. It is interesting, though, but I won't worry too much about this saying Baalke's here for the long term, all that sort of stuff. Still don't have any news on the draft pick, unfortunately. So Logan Cook is now the longest serving Jaguar, as it should be, I guess. Brian Flores was a good coach. Yep, he is a very good coach. I know there's some craziness with his time in Miami. I haven't looked too far into that, but Cam Robinson throwback jerseys, crazy work, not going to lie. Yeah, I won't be buying those anymore. Didn't buy one, thankfully. I got my Boselli jersey. I think I'm going to stick with that. He can't exactly get fired at this point. Gosh. I'm sorry you bought that, Lenny. I really am. I think at this point, we'll have to see if there's any other trades. I don't think there's going to be any more tonight, but we're going to have to watch Travis Etienne really close because you look at what happens with Cam Robinson this last week, right? He was cleared to play, didn't take to the field. I think with Travis Etienne, I think he could absolutely play if they needed him. I think if he was still going to be on this team, he would be playing. I think this coaching staff would be rushing him back because Doug Peterson's trying to save his neck, right? He needs to get players on the field. You could say Tank Bigsby's better all you want, but Travis Etienne does bring things that Bigsby doesn't, and they could utilize him. So for Doug Peterson, he's going to get guys on the field if he can. I think he's getting traded. I think it's just a matter of time, and they're just trying to rest him up. And it's pretty similar to what they've done with Cam Robinson so far. Now, just while we're waiting, because for some reason we're not getting anything about compensation. Hopefully we get something while we're here. But I do want to take a look at the money he's being paid and just explain to you guys how much of this we have already paid out to him, so it'll make sense what's left. And we'll probably have to take some of that. We'll take a look at Minnesota's situation as well. Now, with Cam Robinson, once again looking at two things: non-prorated bonus and base salary. So prorated bonus we're not worried about. The non-prorated bonus gets paid out all at once, usually sometime around the start of the year. We would assume he's earned this money. So what happens then is that your base salary here is essentially split up into 17 different per game, right? So he's played 8 games with Jacksonville. Even if he's injured, it counts, right? So Jacksonville has had 8 games this season of 17. So I'll whip out my calculator. It's not up on the screen here. But you take your base salary, that's the money left to be earned. Each game is worth about $956,000. What they would have paid out to him already is about $7.6 million of this. So what you're going to get that you're probably going to save if you move him is $8.6 million. So that's the amount Minnesota would be taking on here. Now, we have to see if Jacksonville takes on any of this contract. I don't believe that's confirmed at this moment. We do not know yet what is going to happen, unfortunately. Wish one of you guys would break it to me, but you can if you don't know. Okay, Schefter just put something out. Oh, this looks awful. Oh, gosh. All right, so the Vikings get Cam Robinson a conditional 2026 7th that can go away based on playtime, and the Jaguars get a conditional 2026 5th that can become a 4th based on playtime. Okay, that's not that great, honestly. Now, what I'm curious about is if Jacksonville takes on any of that salary, because that's probably a big reason here. Because Minnesota is obviously paying for a lot. We'll take a look at their cap situation. I'm not super familiar with it. The amount of cap space they have available, they would have enough, assuming that there's nothing really missing here. Like we said, they need about $8.6 million. They have $9.5 roughly. So that would leave them with a little bit of extra money. I would be a little surprised if Jacksonville doesn't take on any of that deal. But that's probably a pretty big factor in this. Because say you're trading Brandon Scherf. We can take a look at that because he might be another guy that moves. Brandon Scherf, he's got all this money paid out already for this year. That's taken care of. The Jaguars have paid it. So if a team signs him, or trades for him, that is, they're going to take on very little of the cap. So here, your non-prorated bonus is paid out already. Prorated bonus is already taken care of in the past. $1.75 million is what he gets paid over the season. So if you're trading him, the team taking on his contract isn't even paying $1 million. That's a huge factor here. So it'll be interesting to see if any of this is factoring in cap space, if we're paying any of that. Hopefully we get a 4th. I'm curious what the play time is. Go back to the comments here. Hey, Cardiac, are there any names for GM next year, or do they look at hires at well-run organizations? So, I have not looked into a ton of GMs. I have my eyes set on one guy, I will say, and that is, I almost forgot his name for a second, Ray Agnew. To me, I'm very much in the boat where I just want to purge the living crap out of the Lions organization. They figured things out up there. They were in a very similar situation at Jacksonville, just a longer history of losing. And they had guys they brought in who fixed that. They changed things, right? And I think that the kind of culture they brought in there, I think the way that they play is how I want to play in Jacksonville, right? I want to be dominant in the trenches. I want to beat the crap out of teams there. And I want to have a great run game. These are things that just have not been that important to the Jaguars, not been a focus for them. And Ray Agnew was a big part of building that in Detroit. I heard specifically from NFL Stock Exchange with Trevor Sikkema and Connor Rogers, and they have their sources and they're connected in the NFL, that Ray Agnew was a huge part of their building in the trenches, specifically their investments there. Obviously, Detroit has done really well in that regard. You got Liam McNeil, who just got a huge contract. You have Aiden Hutchinson. You've got your offensive line that's phenomenal there. I don't know if he was there for all their picks, obviously, but he's a big part of what they've done. So he's my guy. I'm definitely looking at Detroit. Let's see what else we got here. Trade Trayvon, Josh Allen. I don't think that's happening. You can't trade Josh Allen for sure. Trayvon, could you? Absolutely, but this organization just is never going to consider that. Yeah, fourth that would have become a third would have been nice. ETN for a 2029 seventh. Probably what they would do. It's an interesting trade. Unfortunately, we're going to have to... Okay, zoom in. Hold up. Maybe this is behind. Hard to read the numbers tweets. Yeah, next thing we see, I'll try to zoom in on that. It's another confusing conditional trade. That's what's frustrating about this, because we have no clue what the conditions are unless they've just posted them. So I can't really explain a whole lot on that. We know this is what's weird about it. Conditional 2026 7th that can go away based on playtime. So I'm assuming, okay, they get the 2026 7th. Okay, so we're giving up a 7th rounder. And, okay, shoot, let me zoom in. My bad. There you go. We get a conditional 2026 5th that can become a 4th. Man, that's not that great, honestly. That's based on playtime. Now, where Cam Robinson sits right now, we're going to have to be rooting like hell that he stays healthy. That's going to be really important. He's played 367 snaps this year. He has not, in his entire career since 2017, hit 1,000 snaps in a season. That is really concerning. So, I would imagine it's probably contingent upon him hitting something like 1,000 snaps realistically on the season. But yeah, we don't have anything extra on this. It'll probably be one of those things we get like tomorrow. Yeah, just per sources. And gosh, that's frustrating. We can never have simple trades that are just like, oh, we got a 4th round pick. Can't do it. It's stupid. Yeah, I've heard things about Ian Cunningham. He's the one that's got a lot of buzz. I'm going to have to look more into him. I've heard of Mike Borgonzi as well. Does trading ETN do anything for money next year? So you'll save about $6 million is the way that'll work. So we'll go to ETN's contract. He's on his 4th year. And 5th year is the 5th year option. He has to be traded to get out of this cap hit. You'll get out of the entire thing. And then you'll also get out of some of this base salary. So if he's traded this year, you save like $1.2 million. Obviously, you'll have to bring up a player. That'll probably take almost half that money. So overall, if you trade him at the deadline, you're saving probably $6.5 million. Just combining the little you do this year and what you do in 2025. But you get out of this cap hit, it's $6 million. I think with Jacksonville, it just feels like the writing's on the wall. Doesn't mean I don't think they'll invest in someone to take over what he was doing. But it's just a question of, if you're not going to play him that much and their team could use him and is going to be a better fit for the way he plays, get the value you can out of him. Because if I can go trade him for a 3rd round pick, which unfortunately waiting this long I think kind of drives down the value too. If I could trade him for a 3rd rounder in the future, and I can go get a Travion Henderson in the 3rd round this year, let's say, then I'm kind of evening out, and I'm getting a rookie that should stick around longer, and you hope would play as well. And you can insert another player, but Henderson feels like kind of one of the obvious ones here. Got nothing else so far. Got Deonte Banks trade rumors. That's actually interesting. Man. So nothing really happens this year. At least we get like a year and a half to understand this trade. Kind of like the Calvin Ridley one, to be fair. Yeah, we do need Ben Johnson. I agree with that. Javon Foster, yeah, I hope he plays fine. I watched him at the Senior Bowl. He was a favorite of mine during the season, the final season he played at Mizzou, but obviously hasn't done anything yet. And there were some concerns with him. I know people mention like he's a top-heavy kind of guy. His movement an issue, but he's a really good run blocker. That was one of the things he was really good at, and I'm kind of surprised they actually got someone like that. Christian Kirk would have at least got us the third, right? No, he would not have. We would have traded him for nothing. After seeing that Deontay Johnson trade, the way I feel about it is I'm glad we didn't trade him. I'm not glad he got hurt, obviously, but that led to us not trading him. And next year, like the way I'm looking at this, I think that you just try to restructure a deal with him. There's no guarantees left, right? We'll take a look at his contract real quick. He is your top guy here on each year, which is just great news. But $16.5 million is what he's owed. You got $1 million in your non-prorated bonus, 15.5 in your base salary. None of this is guaranteed. So you don't have to pay out this entire contract. You can cut him. You can rework the deal. I'm sure he wants to stick in Jacksonville. Everything points to that. Everything he said. There's no reason why he'd want to leave. As long as you give him a better deal than what anyone else would, I think he stays around. And I'd really be comfortable probably with anything that's like maybe 10 million or less would be acceptable. So I hope that's the case with him. I hope we find a way to get him to stick around. Okay, let's see if we got any details here. So, yeah, based on playing time. Okay, so I'm going to reiterate what I've said here because I've said this partially incorrect each time because of how confusing our trades are and how stupid they are. So the pick we're giving up could go away. I would assume that more playing time means that the pick would disappear. So it seems like the ceiling for this is we get a future fourth rounder, which given that the Vikings next year, they're probably not going to have Sam Darnold. They're probably going to have J.J. McCarthy starting. I don't know if that's a playoff team. They're really good right now, but it depends on what J.J. McCarthy is. That could be really bad for them. I mean, this could be a high fourth. More likely, it's probably a middle of the fourth round pick. I don't think they're making a deep playoff run their first year with McCarthy. I hope I'm wrong for the Vikings' sake, but also as a Jaguars fan, I'm fine if they're not good, But that's probably the ceiling of this move. So it's really worth like what a fifth would be this year. It's not that much for him. All right, let's see what else we got here. Yeah, shout out Walker Little. He's finally gonna get his chance. We've pissed him off for long enough. Now we just gotta try to win him back at the final moment. But he's gotta play good, man. Like, I don't want to just see him play average and then sit here and decide, oh, good enough, let's bring him back. Like, what we need to do with this offensive line, we can't settle for that stuff. Like, we gotta get in great players. That's where this team needs to be strong. That's where this team needs to be the best. And I think for me, like, I'm looking at tackles in the draft next year. I'm not keeping Walker Little as my starter unless he plays great. And we got to see that first. I think that the interior of this offensive line needs a lot of help. So to me, like, it's exciting for Walker Little. I hope he gets a good contract in the offseason. And if it's with the Jaguars, I hope he earned it, and I hope he continues to earn it. But he's got to do a lot to prove that he's the guy here because it's been very mixed with him as a player. Yeah, Jay, I don't think we're playing ETN this week. I think we've seen his final snap, to be honest. How realistically can Balky be retained? He built this disaster of a team, and he's a failure. I mean, I agree, but I think it's possible. I'm not thinking it's going to happen. It's got to end at some point. If they keep him, fans aren't going to go to the games. Unless we're all that delusional. We might be that delusional. But I'd like to think that that would be the final straw. And I don't know who would come here and coach. Doug Peterson's going to be gone. Ryan Nielsen has not earned the head coach gig. They can't even bullshit that. So what are you going to do? You going to bring in Bill O'Brien? I mean, that's how I would think he's probably one of the only guys that makes any sense of who might be there. I don't know who else would want to. We got a Vikings fan here. What's up, Max? So Cam Robinson, well, yeah, we'll talk about how he's played. He's a good football player. He's not a great football player. And the thing you're going to see with him, he's a good pass protector. He's generally consistent. He'll have some off games, obviously. If you're looking here, I'll zoom in on this. You can see here, like, pass blocking grades. Consistently around 80. Then you get a couple games where he's off, right? In the early part of the season, he was struggling. But he's played really well since then. As a run blocker, I know Minnesota is generally a better team at that. Cam Robinson is not a great asset in that regard. That's an area where you look at his whole career. Last time he graded out positively, and I sure as heck haven't seen any other way on film, it's 2018. And how many snaps did he play? 71. So, can't even really count that season. So he's just a guy that's like, he's a good pass protector. You're going to get that. You're going to have that side lock down. You're going to be a little worried about injuries. That has been a problem with him. But you're just not going to have much in the run game from him. I would not run the ball that side of the field too much if you can avoid it. I don't know who their right tackle is. I think it's O'Neal, if you're a Vikings fan. But that's kind of how I feel about Cam Robinson. And the good thing for Minnesota as well, and why this is kind of... Can I note this really quick? This is going to piss off Jaguars fans. That's okay. I'm going to be honest with you. So, we're going to take a look at something. Compensatory picks. The Minnesota Vikings. Cam Robinson is going to be a free agent this offseason. He's not getting kept by Minnesota. He's going somewhere else. I don't know that Minnesota spends a bunch of money, but right now, Cam Robinson, what his contract is right now at this moment, is worth a 4th-round compensatory pick. He will not get paid this much, but what he'll probably get you is a 5th-round compensatory pick. Somewhere down here, you see the APY, it gets closer to like 10 million. So you're going to get an end of the 5th-round pick if you let him go and you don't sign free agents that cancel it out. And that depends on if they were released free agents or if they're going to count towards the compensatory formula because their contracts expired. So just something to consider. Minnesota, they're trading a 2026 5th-round pick that could become a 4th. Worst case scenario for the Vikings, if they just played it out and got the compensatory pick, they give up a mid-4th next year, and Jacksonville essentially gives up what would have been a late 5th by just keeping him. And then they save a little bit of money that they could have got cutting him technically, but obviously you don't get anything in that regard. So this is kind of a mess for Jacksonville, in my opinion, because you got to factor that in. You don't want to just spend like crazy every season and cancel out your picks. I get that you got to be safe with that, but it's just something to consider here. It's going to be pretty much over. Sorry for the little disconnection there. I think it went out for a second. We got Jay saying we need to target Wyatt Milam or Josh Simmons. Absolutely. Those are guys we got to go after. Simmons is my top tackle in this class. He obviously had a bad injury, but the guy he reminds me of, interesting guy to bring up right now, is Christian Darrisaw. I think he's a very similar player to him. And I had a comparison for Josh Simmons to Anton Harrison just because of the movement skills, but look at the way Anton Harrison's played. He's not been a good run blocker at all. You look at what Josh Simmons does. He's a good run blocker. you see it more on film. Obviously, your passing grades are much higher here, but Simmons is a phenomenal player in that regard. And Wyatt Milam, he's just a really damn good football player. And West Virginia, what they've done with offensive linemen, what Zach Frazier's done in the NFL, you want to get a guy from that school. You're fine doing that. I think he would be a phenomenal first-round pick for someone. Not going to be going where we're picking, but someone I'm keeping my eye on if we get towards the end of the first round, he's still there. But yeah, those are definitely guys that we can end up targeting. See, we need CB, absolutely. What's the level of concern with Anton? It's somewhat there. I don't think he's played that great this year, but I haven't really watched film on him, so that's one I've been wanting to get to. But I'm not super impressed. I wasn't thrilled with how he started this year. We'll see how he goes from there, but you know, with the way this team has prioritized things on the offensive line, their lack of care really for run blocking, I'm not sure Anton's going to be a complete player, but we'll see. I gotta watch some film. That's all I'm gonna say, I guess. Josh Simmons, top of the second, or trade back up in the first. Absolutely. For me, like, my opinion on Josh Simmons is I'm gonna figure out where the hell he's going in the draft, and I'm gonna trade to that pick. Just anywhere around there. If I gotta overspend on him, I'll overspend on him. I would take Gem pick still. He's like my 6th overall player, I think, at this point. He just obviously has the injury. That's gotta be factored in. Wyatt Milam is a top 15 guy, probably going to make top 10, especially with this draft class not being that strong. Bulky gone yet? No, unfortunately not. Any other players you think we trade away? Well, we'll take a look real quick. Talked about a couple. Make sure nothing else has happened here. We'll just look at the depth chart. It's an easy way of doing this. So, we all probably wish they trade Gabe Davis because we have no idea what we're doing with him, and he's done very little since he's got here. Problem with that, you got to get a team that's willing to pay him $13 million next year guaranteed. Don't think a team wants to do that at this point. The one that was going to pay him that in the offseason was the Bears, and they don't have a need for it. So, not going to happen. Other players, obviously Cam's gone now. They'll have to remove him off here. Walker Little won't get traded now. He's safe. It was going to be one or the other. Robinson always made more sense because you wanted to see what you had in Little. Robinson cost you more. It's pretty obvious. Brandon Scherf, I think he could get moved. I'm not 100% convinced it happens, but there was some talk that might actually be a pretty high pick for him. I don't think it should be, but I saw a 3rd-round pick floated by the Goat House today. I thought that was a little too high, but Scherf has a much better contract to take on. A contender might want to take that in, so maybe that ends up happening. Other players here, I think Evan Ingram's safe. I'd be shocked if they traded him. Mac Jones, in theory, I don't think it's going to happen. Travis Etienne, I would say yes. Pretty confident in that. Eric Armstead's safe. Just signed his contract. Devon Hamilton's possible, but I don't think Trent Baalke would do that because I was looking at the numbers on that, and you would have basically paid him like $19 million to be here an extra year. It's not a good deal. Josh Hines-Allen's safe. Devin Lloyd, in theory, could be, but I don't think they should. I think he's a guy you want to keep around. Ronald Darby, he could get moved. I don't think it would be anything that valuable. You've got Antonio Johnson. I think he'll stick around. Don't see any reason why he get moved. Andre Sisco's probably the last one on here that makes any sense. And to me, that's really, if another team values him enough, I would move him. But otherwise, I'm not. You know, I'd rather be the team that pays him a cheap 1-year deal to see what he is next year under a better coaching staff. At least you think in theory you have one. Or to get the comp pick and that be high. But who knows? I mean, he's had 3 good years in the NFL and then struggled under what's been a shockingly bad defensive coordinator. So those would be my guys I'd be thinking. See what else we got here. Who would want Cisco? I think we threw out the Bills before. Geez, I might actually have the graphic on here. Yeah, there you go. I still got this up from when I recorded the video. Bills, Bills, Seahawks, and Commanders were teams that we were thinking of. That would be my guess. But I think he'll probably stick around. Chances we trade him, probably pretty low. Paulson Adebo, yeah, he might be fine. I remember he was playing pretty well a year ago. I don't know what his situation is now. I will say, I think with things kind of settling down here and getting what we can out of the conditions of this, we'll hear more later, hopefully. I know the Calvin Ridley compensation was just stupid. Hopefully we end up getting information, but we're probably going to call it here. Got another Vikings fan here really quick. He is a good player. He's not great. You're going to have a good pass protector. He's not a good run blocker. That's basically what you need to know. Plus, he struggled with injuries, and at the end of the day, like, you got a good deal still, but we'll see. I did not know Paulson was injured. That's unfortunate. But that's all we got here, guys. I appreciate y'all joining. Gonna shout out our channel members really quick. We got Premier Nasir 904, Mr. Dolphin, Scrubber Ducky 500, and Brian Foster. Had two of you guys in here today. Let me know your thoughts. You can probably comment on this after. Shoot me a message on Twitter. More than happy to talk to you guys on there. But it was real. We'll probably see more of these later. We'll probably have another live stream for it. At least have another video for when players get traded. Travis Etienne. Probably going to get traded. But appreciate